Uh, Thank you very much for turning up today. First of all, you're all familiar with the fire exits. I know that, so I won't go through that again. This is a public meeting and it's recorded. Um, uh, there are some exempt pages, so I need to be notified if you need to refer to them, and we'll have to go into exempt mode. Item, oh, sorry, I welcome Chairman of Scrutiny joining us tonight, and you're very welcome to stay afterwards as well, if you wish to. Yeah, you might do. Right. Okay, so item one, apologies for absence. I know Michelle's on holiday and Chris is standing in. Lydia is joining us on Teams. No other apologies, are there? Thank you very much. Is it? We've got two sets of minutes, uh, uh, public and exempt. Is it your wish that I sign them as a true record? Can someone propose? Second? All those in favour? None against? That's signed. I've done that already. Okay, item 3. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Now we go to item 4, which is matters referred to us from the Scrutiny Committee. I'll invite the Chairman of Scrutiny to say whatever he wishes. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Leader. You've got before you the two reports, so both actually from workshops. We held a dedicated workshop to look at waste and the future developments in waste that are coming online at the moment and are already, being worked on. And we also held, after the last Scrutiny Committee, a workshop looking at local government reorganisation. So you've got the two papers in front of you. I should actually say as well, the last meeting, of course, we had the presentation from the leader and the chief executive, the annual presentation. I'd just like to say thank you to both of you for that. But we don't seem to have fed back any comments from it. So it was obviously so good. We just sat there in awe and soaked it all up. Dealing with the first of the two workshops, and it was actually quite a long workshop on the review of waste, and you'll see there's a lot of comments in the paper that summarises our discussions before you, and as normal, I'm going to go through each and every one, but maybe just draw attention to some of the key points that came out. And the first one, and I don't want to sound like a previous prime minister, but it's essentially, and there's three comments about the same thing in these notes: education, education, education. It was clearly the case, and we kept coming back to this in our discussion, that with the changes that are going to come about, whether that's through the collection of food waste, whether it's the proposal to change the size of bins, whether it's other changes, it's really important, because we've already got an issue with residents not necessarily complying fully with the requirements on recycling, and there is an issue with contamination of recycling, and there was a concern that if we don't put the right level of effort and communication into educating our residents about some of the changes that are going to come about in the next 12 to 18 months, 2 years, that could cause us problems as well. So that was the first thing, just to draw your attention to. The second one, it was an offhand comment initially about our volunteers, the Wombles who go around collecting waste, but it then not being picked up by Biffa, and there've been instances where the waste has been left for collection, and then some very nice people have come along and scattered that waste at the roadside or wherever. And I think it just flagged up there's perhaps a need to tighten up the way the liaison takes place, to ensure that where that work is undertaken by the volunteers, there's a prompter arrangement to collect. So I think it was more, again, about communication as to how that should happen. We did actually discuss bin size, and I think the view that came out of the committee, there was an understanding of the logic of looking at changing the size of bins, because I didn't know until it was explained to us by the officers that we we're on the large size of the range of bin provision across Leicestershire and perhaps nationally even. But nevertheless, whilst we understood the logic of looking to reduce bin size as a way of encouraging people to think about how, where their waste goes, there was certainly the view that there needs to be an acknowledgement that residents' needs vary. And I use a personal example, for instance, I've still got 2 black bins because when I had 4 kids living at home, we were allowed extra bins because of the size of the household. And so things like that need to be factored in, that we actually understand that it may not be a one size fits all, and there needs to be some flexibility. And as we apparently still have 560 of the large bins in stock, I don't think it would be a problem in accommodating, where appropriate, residents' needs. But by the same token, a lot of people are saying that it'd be very welcome if smaller bins were introduced. A lot of residents have been frustrated about not being able to access them. So again, it's just about listening to residents and acknowledging the genuine needs. One interesting thing that came up, and I think it was unresolved at the meeting, but it came from Richard Sharp, Councillor Richard Sharp, who, as you know, is a farmer, and he was expressing some concern about the disposal in anaerobic incinerators or whatever they are, that if it isn't heated to a certain temperature, and is disposed of, it can actually contaminate watercourses and supply, and farmers certainly are aware of that. And I think that was going to be taken away and looked at again. And then I think probably finally, not finally, as an aside, there was a little bit of frustration that as the collecting authority, we get nothing for anything that might be accrued from recycling. It all goes to the recycling authority, which of course is Leicestershire, but that was just an aside. And yeah, so the only other issue, we understood from the presentation that there is a proposal to cease issuing communal bin sats for their residents with communal bins. At the moment, they are supplied, and there was some concern based on that experience of living in those sorts of properties, the flats, etc. That whilst there might be a saving, the downside could be residents in some of those properties who currently aren't necessarily as meticulous with their disposal as they could be, that problem becoming worse. And we ought to again just look at that and see whether that actually is going to create more problems than the savings are worth. But there was an assurance given that we'd have an quality impact assessment in considering that policy. So I think that is going to be addressed. Other than that, yeah, I think I'll just leave it for the cabinet to absorb the rest of the comments that are in there. So I'm happy if there are any questions about anything that's in that report.
Thanks, Mike. Margaret, do you have any particular questions? It's your portfolio.
Not questions, just sort of comments on what sort of Mike has said. I do think that there's nothing to stop large families, as far as I understand it, having 2 of the smaller bins should they wish. But the objective is to reduce the amount of black bin waste and increase the recycling, which is what we're under pressure to do anyway. So there is sort of various ways that you can do that. And one of them is by reducing the size of the black bins, and then keep the brown bins the same size that they normally are. But the reduction in the sizes of the black bins will not come, I would imagine, until those bins have to be replaced, that they're damaged. So it's not going to be, woof, we're all changing. It's going to be a gradual process. So with education, as you mentioned before, it might entice people to use their recycle bins more effectively. And I do note your point about the anaerobic digester. It's one of the main concerns that I personally have as well. So I'd like to thank Richard for raising that. And you mentioned about the community properties, where we do at the moment provide pink bags for that. And I think I'm not quite sure, but I think we might be one of the only authorities that do provide those pink bags. But we will still provide, the plan is to still provide them to the sort of Wombles, etc., and other areas that actually desperately need them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. I've just got a bit of a concern about contamination in bins, and I'm glad you've made that, Mike. If you've got a contaminant, if they open the lid and see something in there what shouldn't be in there in the bin, right, it gets left. So that the class that as contamination, right, on the bin. But then they leave it, then they come and fetch it in another wagon. Well, that's still got the waste in. So I'd like to know if that's terminated, where does that go down to Biffa? Does that go in a certain place, or does it go with the recycling stuff? I've mentioned this before to customer services.
I could comment, but I don't know the exact details. But I'd imagine if it's contaminated, it'll go with a normal landfill, won't it? Yeah.
I mean, that, if I could say, Chair, I mean, that was asked, and that was the reply we got, that if waste is contaminated, then it just goes into the landfill. There's nothing they can do about it at that stage.
I mean, if you think about plastics alone, there are a lot of plastics that can't be recycled, different colours. So, you know, you get your meal that goes in a microwave, and if it's at the plastic is a certain colour, it's got to go in residual. It can't go in recycling. If it goes in recycling, that is considered to contaminate the whole bin, as I understand it. So there's this is a big problem nationally. Yeah, yes, Ed, please. Or is it? Yeah, it's Ed.
Yeah, no, just to say, I think the point was made earlier on about education. This is why communication and education is so key, because a small amount of contamination in a recycling bin or a recycling load can mean the whole bin or the whole load is rejected, and the whole load will then go to landfill or to the residual waste stream, and therefore not be recycled in the most environmentally friendly way. So making sure we continue to push those messages out is absolutely crucial to minimise the risk of that happening.
To help push that message out, I remember being in Northumberland, as you know, I got there quite a lot. But on the bin lids, on the outside, there is a clear message, items that can go into this bin, and make sure they're clean. And I think it's all about getting people educated and making them think, I've seen that, or this is dirty, let's wash it out and put it in there and make sure it is the correct item. Yes, I think that's probably the message. But also, we can't do this on our own. It's about everybody playing their role. And one thing that I have heard from a lot of residents is they are, well, they're not very keen. I'm totally against, I would say, is a sort of better description of having 3 weekly collections. So it's something that we've really got to deal with.
And you've finished. You don't want to say anything else.
I mean, I only just to close down that thing about contamination. The question was asked, and the main contamination problem is through food. It's not. It doesn't appear to be through the wrong plastics, but it's mainly items not being properly cleaned and food residue.
Under LGR, dare I say, and also when we start to roll out the new bins for food waste. Okay, no, I'm looking at everyone. I think we've concluded that. So I move to note the report. I'll move that if someone second that. All those in favour to note the report. Thank you very much, Mike, and your team, STAR team. Right. So we now go on to item 5. Invite.
Sorry, there's a second report on the scrutiny, Chair.
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. Did you want to say anything more about that? Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you.
Waste first.
It's not a complete waste then.
No. Now, the second workshop was on local government reorganisation. And again, the comments are all set out for you there. And of course, Leader, you took part in that discussion and very helpfully contributed towards it. I think the only item, I'm reviewing it again today, the only item I think came up, which is a bit of a watch this space item, was the discussion about the future mayoralty, because of course part of the, there's LGR and there's devolution, and the devolution with the setup of a strategic authority. We had a bit of a discussion about the fact that whilst that looked fine on paper, because other counties have already gone, Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire have gone, Lincolnshire have got their own mayor. Leicester, although I understand Leicester are now accepting they wouldn't have a mayor under the new arrangements from the latest promulgations. But would this be a long-term fix? Because there would be an inequality between the mayoralities in the different areas. So you've got places like Manchester, Greater Manchester, with a huge mayorality, and you've got Leicestershire. So I think whilst we can look at what's happening now, and it doesn't affect our proposals here, I think we've got to be aware that this may not be the end of the road in terms of the devolution side of the package. I think we had a very interesting discussion about that. But other than that, the comments are all there and they're pretty much in line. I don't think there was any real divergence from the position that's been adopted so far by the council.
Give a bit of a stop press news on that. I was on a webinar today in which this was one of the items that was under review to some extent, and they're keen to emphasise the distinction between what we might call civic and ceremonial mayor and an executive mayor in charge of somewhere. And I think, so far as we understand it at the moment, the thinking is that existing mayors will not be immediately abolished, but there will be no new mayors for civic, for administrative roles beneath the devolved authority, so the unitary councils won't have them. But I think there was a sensitivity around the civic and ceremonial. What's interesting for us in this borough is that the borough will disappear. So would there be a mayor? And the question of town councils came up, but they want to move towards not town councils, because that would be another layer of council laws, another layer of tax. But they want to move downstream of devolution to much more community-based arrangements where local councillors and the community will have control. So I can see that for places like us who value a mayor in the civic and ceremonial role, there's a bit of discussion to be had, because some people value that quite a lot. But it's something to be debated, I think, in the future. But we'll see what the bill says on Thursday, because there's another bill coming up this Thursday on that topic. But it won't affect the mainstream of local government, really. So any questions of Mike on this, or any comments? So I move that we note the second report on. It's been seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much, and thank you, Mike. Very welcome to stay. Right. So now, Sarah, we're on to item 5. I'll let you open the batting there. Go on.
Thank you. So this report relates to the General Fund revenue and capital outturn. Once again, the finance team have done a fantastic job in getting the draft statement of accounts published ahead of the statutory deadline, and they are currently available for public inspection. It should be noted that the outturn position in front of us for the report and the HRA later on the agenda will remain provisional until the audit is complete. The administration know that the financial pressures we face will become more pressing in the coming years, and I thank the officers because this report demonstrates the work that they have done to save money during the last financial year that will help us meet our obligations in the coming years. The report shows a comparison of the provisional outturn to the forecast position reported to members in February, when the budget for the current financial year was set, We've actually ended the year with a surplus on the general expenses of just over 326,000 after allowing for carry forwards, which has resulted in a higher balance returning to the reserves than was forecast. With regard to the special expenses in Melton Mowbray, after allowing for carry forwards into current financial year, there is a small deficit of 18,000, which is lower than the 44,000 that was actually forecast. There are a number of significant variations, both under and overspends, as shown within the report and set out in detail in the appendix. There were pressures highlighted during the year due to the rising costs of temporary accommodation, and I think that's been recognised at a government level in terms of finance that's now been given to authorities, coupled with the large shortfall in planning income forecast, and that actually reversed by the end of the year. Officers took steps at that time to mitigate and limit the spending where possible. A number of large planning applications were then received late in the financial year, and with the investment income exceeding expectations, coupled with lower expenditure in a number of service areas, this led to a much better financial outcome at the year end than was originally forecast for us. With the financial pressure and funding uncertainty on the district councils from the forthcoming funding review, this further increase in reserves over that expected helps us to mitigate the future funding challenges that are likely to come, we know, in 26-27. I'd certainly like to thank all of the budget holders here in the meeting today and the finance staff who have worked so hard at managing the budgets during the year, and which has resulted in a positive outcome for the general fund and certainly assisted us as an administration going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and my thanks to you for keeping on top of this as well. It's a great relief to me. Someone's on top of the numbers, and I echo everything you've said about the work of the staff to not just report, but to actually manage the money. It's been a great comfort. Margaret, please.
Yes, thank you for that. I think it's very interesting and really, really good news. And I'd just like to give the reassurance to those that are perhaps watching or listening at some point that this has been achieved by delivering everything that we set out to do, and the things that we haven't managed to do, we've taken that money forward to this particular year to complete as well. So we've managed a saving without any impact on our delivery, and I think that is wonderful news.
Okay. Yes, please, Sharon.
Sorry, Sarah, on page 27, 4.1.4, could you just explain that a little bit of detail?
Okay, 4.1.4, the provisional year end shows a net underspend compared to the forecast after allowing for carry forwards. So carry forwards are things that we've agreed in the budget last year. The projects weren't complete, so those items will be carried forward, and that they will be completed this year. So we know in particular there's some work we've requested in terms of our assets that weren't completed last year. We've allocated that funding, it will be spent, and we've been assured by the team that the procurement is set up and that will be completed this year. So that's your carry forwards. There's then been the improved position of the corporate reserves. That's the extra 326,000 that's been added to the corporate reserves. So this is because we were originally quite concerned that there would be an overspending year, and that was because planning applications had been down in particular, and quite financially prudently the officers began to prepare for that shortfall in income, and then we had some additional quite substantial planning applications come in that actually boosted the planning department, and we'd agreed that additional resource to go in there to ensure that was managed. So what that actually means is, in addition to the reserves that we've added to already, that's an extra 326,000 that goes into that corporate reserve.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the officers for their hard work as well.
Thank you. And I think it's worth adding, if I may, when we were elected 2 years ago, we were told about the firm basis of the revenue, the current account, but we were warned about the long-term position of reserves. So we've been continuing to be prudent in what we do and not rush forward with things and keep an eye on the future. So I think it's that policy is working. So we're establishing a good base on which to add to our work. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, if I could just add, Leader, we have substantially added to the reserves. I think we were all aware when we came in as an administration, we were all briefed on how, precarious the position of the reserves were. I think what we have to appreciate is that those reserves will only go so far. So us as an administration have added our business rate pool money to those reserves. We could have spent that. We could have wasted that, but that would have meant some very hard decisions going forward. I think it will help mitigate potentially hard decisions, but there are potentially hard decisions still to make. So what we did do as an administration, we made a commitment to the public that we would use their money wisely. We would preserve the services we have and give good quality services, those that we already deliver. And that's our commitment. And, we are hoping that the position we put ourselves in with the reserves will allow us to maintain those services going forward.
Sorry, just me again. Yes, I think at 4.1.8 does identify all the areas where the extra funding has come from, and there's page 28, sorry. And there is one particular area which I think we as a cabinet have contributed to by the reduced number of portfolio holders within our cabinet. So that has sort of provided a saving for the past 2 years. And I know we've all got big portfolios, but we just crack on with it. It's a bit like the officers, everyone's working really, really well together. So a huge thank you to everybody. Thank you.
I think that shows that we're all in this together. The officers are making savings in their department, and us as a cabinet have made considerable savings, certainly in excess of 10,000 a year. So over the 4 years, that is quite a substantial amount, and hopefully council taxpayers that are watching this meeting will understand that we're committed to delivering that saving for them.
Thanks, Ed. We can move to note the report. So I shall move that. Seconded. All those in favour, please show. None against. That's carried. We're on to item 6. I'll let you do this, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. So this report relates to the HRA provisional outturn. So the report compares the provisional outturn with the original budget. It was set at the rent meeting in February, as well as the latest approved estimate, which incorporates in-year approvals. The overall position is an overspend against the approved budget of 489,000. This results in a in-year deficit of 525,000, which will be met from reserves. Now that sounds quite concerning, and I'm going to go into exactly why we've had that overspend. This overspend is in line with what has been reported to Cabinet during the year. The key area of overspend is on repairs and maintenance. As previously reported, this is due to a number of legacy payments from prior years which had not been accrued alongside a higher level of voids in the year. Responsive repairs were also higher than budgeted for, and these repairs being in excess of the price per property envelope. What is really important is that the team noted this very quickly, and I would like to thank the housing team for taking immediate action on that. And as a cabinet, we were briefed very early on what action would be taken in relation to that. Due to these issues, work is being undertaken to analyse trends in demand, to refine the budget setting, as well as progressing an early exit from the legacy contract due to the need to improve value for money in this area. And I'd like to highlight that the housing team that are currently in place were not part of forming that contract. So this is a contract that not only us as an administration inherited, but there's a housing team inherited as well. And I think it's important what we do going forward now. One area to particularly note is that due to the reduction in rent arrears balances and the age of the remaining debts, there has been a reduction in the bad debt provision, resulting in a £161,000 underspend in this area. And I'd like to draw Cabinet and observers' attention to the significant reduction in arrears that's shown within the report. And again, thank the team for this focus of area, because it was highlighted not only by us as an administration, but other tenants as well, because many of our tenants pay on time and they wanted those that don't pay on time to actually be addressed. Capital spend has performed well, with the majority of the underspend and subsequent carry forward relating to the purchase of affordable housing. The impact on the reserves is shown in the report, and it can be seen that the headroom above the 1 million minimum working balance is maintained, albeit at a low level in the early years of the business plan. Future overspends are therefore not sustainable. It is recognised that the reserves start to increase after 2029 following the smoothing of the condition surveys works, but it is important that spend is brought in line with the budgets set, and I know that officers are working on actions that can be taken to ensure actual spend is brought into line with the budget when issues are identified in the future. This administration is committed to ensuring that future contracts get the best value for money for our residents and our tenants going forward. Thank you.
Sarah, and I'd like to add, as portfolio holder for housing, that in every way I have complete confidence in what the staff do in this area, and they alert me very early on to any difficult trends that we're approaching, and they take remedial action very quickly. So I feel that we're in a good place. We have to cope with problems, and these sort of things are demand driven, a lot of it, but I'm really very pleased that we've been managing to push down debt. Because it's not just the cash in the till, it's the effect on the families. If they can manage their money, they become less of a problem in other dimensions, and that has a good knock-on effect socially. We mustn't forget that. Anybody else want to say anything or ask questions? We got Chris in the room. He's really good, really. Yeah, go on, Sharon.
I'd just like to say problems do happen, but if ever I've addressed anything and gone to Chris or Doug or whatever, on the team, they've addressed it really quickly, professionally, and, spoke to the residents, and the residents are really thankful for that. Just the fact that they take on board. We had something the other week, didn't we? And the officers went straight out and spoke to the residents, and it was, so just thank you to them for listening to them.
I think I'd like to thank the housing team in that when we had the briefing in relation to the overspend, it was very clear they were able to identify what the issues were within the original contract. So I think actually having that, it's a learning experience. This is a period of time where we've gone to commercialisation for these contracts. We've learned from that first period and that first substantial contract that was written and what we need to do going forward to make it better value for money. But I think the important thing is the work was done. So the jobs have been being done for our tenants, and that's really important, that quality of service, and that our tenants get that good quality of service. That's really important. And where we're not getting value for money, I have confidence in the housing team that they will challenge that and going forward. So that's the bit that is important to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? Okay, well, I'll move to the recommendation, which is to note the report. I'll move that. Anybody? All those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Sarah. That's a great relief to me that you did that. Right, okay, so we're now moving on to item 7. I suppose this will be you again, will it?
Yeah, this is my favourite one. So the Treasury Management, we always have such
Page
good news.
65.
Yeah.
Steve.
Sorry, Steve.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you like me, you have to have time to just whiz through and get to it. So the Treasury Management Report is the one that I'm always pleased to report, and that's thanks to the good work of the finance team in securing exceptional returns for us as a council. So I'm pleased to propose this annual report covering the Treasury management activities for the whole of the financial year 23-24. No new borrowing has been undertaken in the year, and borrowing remains within our statutory limit, although it should be noted that some of the indicators in the appendices have been updated to reflect the change in accounting requirements relating to leases, which have had to be brought onto the balance sheet. The investment return for the year was 5.27% compared to 5.07% in 23-24, which, as was seen in the outturn reports, has had a real positive impact on the investment returns and has helped mitigate some of the financial pressures being faced not only by the HRA, but has also contributed to the underspend on the general fund. This is despite a fall in the base rate, and the council continues to perform exceptionally well against its benchmarking group as ever. They're doing exceptionally well. The valuation of the council's property fund, because I know this is a particular interest of the opposition, continues to show a book loss, although it is improving in its position. And the dividend also remains positive. So we get a dividend from that fund, which has always contributed to the coffers. Due to an extension to the statutory override, this loss has not had to be realised, although the council does hold a reserve to mitigate this should the need arise once the override ends. And our reserve is actually higher than the book loss that's noted at the moment. The current reserve held is, that's the high. I wish to thank the finance team for their hard work in this area and securing investments whose returns have helped ease the pressure on some very tight budgets. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And all done without bitcoins. Thank goodness. Any other comments? Sorry. Say there was some comment made today at a webinar about from ministers about the need across the local government sector to grapple with the audit problem and the audit deficit. And it was very pleasing to be able to note that we're doing pretty good on that in terms of our management of our audit process. We're pretty much up to the mark. And in answer to questions recently from people living outside the borough, I was able to point that out. So I was really pleased, and thank you very much to the staff for that. So there are two recommendations. One is to recommend to council that we approve the Treasury Management Audit Report. I'll take that as a separate item. So all those in favour, please. Oh, I'll propose any second it. Yes, all those in favour. Thank you. None against. So that's gone. And now we go to note the actual position of the indicators. So I'll move that. Second it. Somebody. Thank you. All those in favour. That's passed. Thank you very much. And thank you, team. We now pass on to item 8. And just to remind you, there are some yellow exempt pages in it. So if you intend to need to refer to those, we will have to go into closed session. And I'll be guided by Clive as appropriate. Okay. Is it over to you, Sarah? Thank you.
It's the July Sarah show, isn't it? So this relates to write-off debts. As I've highlighted earlier in the outturn reports, the increased focus on debt recovery is having a positive impact on our finances in terms of the level of bad debt provision we're having to set aside. You know, a focus of our administration was we inherited some quite significant debt levels, and we've funded additional resource and stressed that we wanted those to come down, and the work of the officers has been fantastic in reducing those outstanding debts. It's always recognised though that some people will default on debts, and that's what this report represents, although it is minimal. It is recognised that there is more work to do, though, particularly in sundry debts and rent recovery, but we must recognise the substantial progress that has been made over the last 2 years. We continue to perform well in terms of collection of council tax and business rates, although there has been a drop in performance similar to other local authorities, and that's representative of the challenging economic position many householders face at the moment. All debts proposed for write-off in this report have followed the steps set out within the council's corporate debt recovery policy, and I've been briefed on every individual and the actions that have already been taken. I'm satisfied as portfolio holder that all the debts that are recommended meet those requirements. Thank you.
Sarah, if any questions, remind you that you mustn't ask questions about the yellow paper, all right? Yeah. Thank you,
Just
Steve.
one, Chair. Can you clarify, please, Sarah, on page 98, 4.3 at the bottom, is that 60,188? Is that for the year written off, please? Is that yearly? For the last year?
That just relates to this report, councillor Cast. That's this if there were another series of write-off debts, another report would be presented to cabinet. So that is only the ones that have met the threshold at the moment. So it's not done yearly, it's done on when it meets a threshold.
Right.
So Dawn reviews them, and if they reach a threshold, then I get briefed on them and we consider them.
Cheers.
Some of the council tax numbers are quite high that have got into that. Do we intervene with them earlier now, like we did with the rent arrears? You know, to help them, you know, to capture it earlier.
I mean, that's the endeavour with all of our debts, really, that if we feel it's a real issue with inability to pay or money management, then we'll refer them over to case management or other external bodies that can help with debt management. So that's always the aim. You know, we can't always say that there aren't some that slip through the net, but we try where we can to engage and support people and not let debts rise to this sort of level.
They're working. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be many. I just wondered if we, you know, captured them earlier. And remember, we were top of the benchmark for collection for debt. So well done to the officers on that as well.
I was on. Yeah. Well, I did it without moving my hands. You noticed that. So, right. So there's no more questions or points to make. Chairman of Scrutiny, did you want to say anything? You're always really welcome. I have a very liberal ship here. Okay, I'll move the 2.1 initially. That's just a note. So I'll move that. Second it, please. Thank you, Sharon. All those in favour? That's carried. And then the next one is to authorise the chief officer to write off debts, which are shown in the yellow pages. So I shall move that. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Sharon. All those in favour, please show. None against. Thank you very much. Carried. And that's the final item on this public meeting. Thank you very much indeed. And just a reminder, we're going to convene after this meeting. So declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah.